Welcome, everybody. We're glad to see you here, and we all hope that some other people come and join us in a little bit too. I know that Eric Giddens is on his way, so he will be joining us. This is our last forum of the legislative session. We will have a wrap up when the session ends, but this is our last scheduled forum, and I just want to thank all the groups that have sponsored this forum this year. This forum is sponsored by a consortium of community groups. And I will just put in a little plug. If your group is not sponsoring the forum and you would like to, just talk to me, okay? And we can arrange that for next year. We are so glad to have our representatives here with us today. Bob Pressick, Jerome Amos, and Timmy Brown Powers.
Let's make this full screen if we can.
Oh, okay. Okay,
That's
thank
much
you.
better.
The topic today is the environment, and we have two experts on the environment that will speak to us. I think they're experts. They know a whole bunch about the environment. Roger White and Tom Shelkey. And who would like to go first? Okay.
It's on.
Yep.
Great. Thank you, Gene, and thank you for not only today, but seriously before. Yeah. Is your mic on? Well, so.
Oh, are they on over there? Does someone want to go over there and check to make sure they're on over there? Oh, okay.
This way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice work.
Yep.
Excellent. Thanks. And as I said, I'm Roger White, and I think Gene picked me because, among others, I'm chair of the BlackHawk Source Enhancement Protection for REAP Committee. Chair of the committee for the 20 years or thereabouts. But BlackHawk County does have an active REAP committee. We meet 2 or 3 times a year. But that's really all we need to meet. So tonight I want to talk about the environment and specifically climate and what climate is happening, what's happening with the climate and what it's doing to us. Climate change is defined as shifts in the Earth's climate driven by human activities, mainly greenhouse gas emissions that are caused by burning fossil fuels. Greenhouse gases are primarily carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, hydrofluorocarbons, that's a mouthful, which are abbreviated HCFCs, which is when we force that the average global temperatures will rise at least 1.5 degrees Celsius that was predicted due to the greenhouse gases that already exist out there in the atmosphere and in the ocean. What's worse is regional temperature change has been variable and more dramatic. For example, in 2022, the Arctic as a whole was 6 degrees Celsius warmer than the 1979-2000 average. The extreme heat at the poles is causing rapid melting of ancient ice sheets and even thawing of the permafrost. Outside the Arctic and Antarctica, glaciers are melting and disappearing. The melting of ice, the ancient ice in the Antarctic and the Greenland major ice sheets, and the melting glaciers releases liquid water, which causes rising sea level. Thawing of permafrost releases methane. And as you remember, that was one of the greenhouse gases. It actually is more potent, one of the more potent of greenhouse gases. It's more potent than carbon dioxide. Native communities in Alaska have already had to relocate due to rising sea level and melting permafrost. As the planet warms and more water vapor exists, extreme weather events such as heat waves, floods, droughts, and killer storms have become more frequent and intense. Following extended drought, wildfires are more prevalent and more severe, as was evident in the western United States, in Australia, and northern Russia over recent years. Unfortunately, those who have contributed the least to climate change are frequently affected the most. Examples are the continent of Africa, Southern Asia, and small Pacific islands. Without immediate action, the climate crisis is heading to widespread poverty, hunger, and forced migration. Global warming, rising sea levels, changing precipitation patterns, and more extreme weather events are already increasing threats to human health, food, water security, and economic development across the globe. Here is an example of some recent headlines from the Des Moines Register. Quote, killer storms expected to get worse, end quote. Quote, warming to lead to more supercells, tornadoes, end quote. Quote, climate change factor in Pakistan floods, end quote. And this one really gets me. Quote, Antarctica and Arctic, 70 and 50 degrees above normal. From changes in wildfire occurrence in Australia and the Western US, to ice loss rates in polar regions, to floods and heat waves in Europe, there is mounting evidence our global climate is changing at unprecedented rate. Costs for recovery from weather disasters continue to mount. Food shortages are emerging, and climate refugees from affected areas are already creating increased social disruptions in areas beyond the immediate area affected by the climate extreme. So what about Iowa? Iowa's climate is also changing. In the last 3 decades, Iowa weather has become more extreme in many ways. Annual rainfall has increased. Seasonal rainfall at critical times for agriculture has increased. Humidity has increased in all seasons. Summer maximum temperatures have actually decreased. Winter temperatures have increased. Summer nighttime temperatures have increased. And the list goes on. Climate change is creating negative impacts on Iowa's economy and our communities. For example, the Iowa derecho on August 10th, 2020 caused a swath of damage to outbuildings, barns, grain bins, homes, mobile homes, power lines, and over 7 million trees in about a 3-hour span of time that cost over $11 billion to clean up and left behind damage to crops estimated at $500 million. In 2019, Iowa was ravaged by record-breaking floods of the Mississippi and Missouri rivers, deemed the, quote, great flood of 2019, end quote, by the New York Times. At least 3 people perished and 14 million people were affected. Governor Reynolds asked the president to declare a federal disaster area in 67 of Iowa's 99 counties. The long-term damage was estimated at $2.9 billion, a state record. The drought of 2012 reduced statewide corn yields to 137 bushels an acre compared to the 10-year average of 179 bushels an acre. The following year, 2013, over 700,000 acres in Northwest Iowa couldn't be planted because of the wet soils throughout the planting season. The annual accumulated precipitation in the April, May, June period in each of the 3 most recent decades has been above the average of any and all decades of the 20th century. The annual April, May, June total precipitation in the most recent decade, 2010 through 2019, was 27% increase over the 20th century average. So Iowa is not immune to the effects and the cost of climate change. Any legislative actions that exacerbates global warming or that will undo or reverse previous positive initiatives related to energy conservation, carbon reduction, or replacement of fossil fuel with truly renewable energy sources are the wrong direction for you folks to take. For Iowa, for the United States, and if we desire long-term survival of the planet, the flora, the fauna that we rely on, and in fact, we human beings. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Tom?
It's not working. Working now.
Yeah.
I know. Yes, your mouse. So I'm Tom Schulke from Waterloo. To better prepare for this chance to speak. And by the way, thank you, Roger, and thank you all of you guys for being here consistently all the time, representing us, listening to everybody, really. I really appreciate it, and Gene. So to better prepare for this chance to speak, I spent time visiting with people about their main concerns regarding conservation and the environment in Iowa. I spoke with DNR, county conservation professionals, fishermen, hunters, nature users, citizen scientists, etc. Your constituents. Based on their experiences in Iowa, the main concerns were: number one, conservation programs are chronically underfunded or cut. Fully fund I will keep other funds counties and cities relying on flowing. If we keep cutting taxes, who's eventually going to pick up the tab? Number two, habitat loss continues to be a major issue here and worldwide. We have been witnessing a serious decline in pollinators, butterflies, birds, in water quality, native plants, and other animals. Iowa ranks fourth in the nation in the volume of migratory birds passing through our state. Iowa is also a major corridor for migrating monarch butterflies. Maintaining habitat for wildlife is important. It is said that if just 2% of farmland is returned to native vegetation, the decline would be held back, and carbon would be stored in the amount any CO2 pipeline would possibly capture. Some say we are an ag state, get over it. If it is flat, it should be farmed. Farm supporters say we have enough public land already. They can't manage what they already have, so why do they want them? We think marginal farmland should be better served, would be better served enhancing our wildlife, soils, and water. Number three, education. Big for me, retired educator, Waterloo in the state. Education and awareness of our role and impact on the environment need attention. Our state court is meant to say foundation and education. Take a look at it. If we want to require high school students to pass a civics exam to be better citizens, how about a requirement for students to be better stewards of the land through environmental education? Iowa Senate Natural Resources and Environment Committee is dominated by Farm Bureau members with little or no environmental credentials. When I hear elected officials falsely claim on public radio that the DNR always outbids young farmers for land, or that all the public land in Hardin County was donated, there's a problem with misinformation and education in our elected ranks. Number four, water quality remains a major concern. Poor farming practices contribute to erosion and poor water quality. Why don't conventional farmers better manage the land they already have? Why do they need more when 90% of our land is already in agricultural use? Why do we allow cattle to freely roam in our trout streams, where farmers plant crops right to the edge of the rivers and streams? Number five, our image. People pine for the way they used to see the landscape. Older people remember what the land used to look like when it was more diverse. Iowa greets people with a big sign saying, Iowa welcomes fields of opportunities. What image comes to mind? Is it fields of corn? What perception do you have of Minnesota? Is it lakes and trees? Yet, both states rely heavily on agriculture and have the prairie ecosystem to thank for it. Iowa claims to be based in agriculture. I would define it more as agribusiness. Get big or get out, so to say. Something has to change. So what can be done about these issues? Here's some ideas that I heard from other people and myself. Iowa could be the first state to have a beautiful regal fritillary, which is linked to our prairie heritage as a state butterfly. 48 states have a state insect. Iowa's one or two that doesn't. That'd be a great one. Encourage each county to have 5 supervisors over 3 to allow more balance in decision making. Iowa could be the first state to require high school coursework on the environment. Call it sense of place. Require urban sprawl to be matched with at least 10% of land devoted to natural areas. Help fund that conversion. Enact legislation to require buffers to protect our waterways and natural areas. Check out the Minnesota buffer law. Promote the good things farmers and ordinary people are already doing for the environment. There's money to advertise the sustainable farming practices, energy saving measures, and habitat protections Iowans are already doing. We require teachers to be well-informed educators and to know our subject matter. Most voting on environmental regulation can be better informed. A suggested reading list would be helpful. What if the Practical Farmers of Iowa that promotes sustainable farming practices and helps 1,500 young farmers get started, had 3 full-time lobbyists, $100 million in the bank, and their own insurance company, like the Iowa Farm Bureau? Would debates on agriculture be more balanced? Start the session here with an environmental priority. For the supermajority that have these concerns, speak to all the House and Senate. It is time to go on the offense and not have to be continually defending our public lands, public teachers, and public values. The supermajority of Iowans keep saying they want these changes and they want to be represented, not ruled. Thank you for being here. Representing your constituents, I really appreciate it. Others do too. If you have any questions or stories you want to hear about these issues, I'd be happy to entertain them. I could go on for 2 hours with all the stories I've heard from people all over Iowa about these things. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. And now it's time to hear from our legislators. You're going to be on your honor system tonight. We don't have a timer. So if you would each speak maybe about 5-6 minutes, and that would be absolutely wonderful. We'll start with you, Bob.
Okay. Well, thank you for being here tonight and talking about the environment. Not much has been done with that at the Capitol. Matter of fact, I serve on the Iowa Environmental Protection Committee in Des Moines. And the majority party, the only bill that we did in that committee was to restrict local communities to establish water, bike trails, public locations for people to come out and enjoy the outdoors. And there was I attended that subcommittee, and there was a ton of people in there, a lot. And I was like, wow, this is a big crowd. And so we started out, and there were county people there, saying this is going to be bad for Iowa. We shouldn't be doing this. And they went around. The only one that spoke in favor of the bill, guess who it was? Farm Bureau. They were the only ones there. And thankfully that bill didn't go any further, but it's just kind of an indication currently what the majority thinks. The majority is the party that's in control of deciding what takes place at the Capitol. And they had no real interest in it. I know I've attended several of the meetings with REIT over the years. And I was just amazed going to those meetings to see the numbers of people there from some of the rural counties and their really big interest in improving their outdoor recreational areas and water quality and of course REIT. And if you go in to read the funding for that, I think it started out, it was going to get allocated 20 million. And they've never met that number. They've never gone to that number. I don't even know what was the highest number, Roger.
Well, they did get the 20 million once.
Once.
And that's when the 20 million was established as the goal for the
Oh,
future.
okay.
But this was 1986 or
Yeah.
87, so.
So my sense is currently in the legislature, there's very little interest in focusing on some of the things that were shared today. Habitat loss, water quality, those are all serious issues. And Roger talked about climate change. Well, it's kind of like other things. There's deniers relative to climate change. They don't believe it's occurring. Even though the water levels have significantly increased because of the icebergs melting. And it's very frustrating that they won't listen and try and make some positive changes for the future of Iowa. And it's I don't even know why they have a committee anymore called environmental protection, because they're not focused at all on it. So but I do appreciate you both here and speaking on those topics and issues. So thank you.
Thank you. Jerome?
Hello, everyone. Tom and Roger both. We have an environmentalist expert up here who's on an environmental committee, but sitting here listening, especially you, Tom, I know, Roger, you're well versed on it, but that list that you just read, that document that you just had, can you send that to us? Okay, so the other thing, you heard Representative Pressig say that there's another party in charge. I heard a word that you said, super majority. That's what they have in the Senate right now. So my recommendation would be to send that same document that you're going to send to us, send to them, let them know that their constituents want this. But one thing that I can tell you, this is my first year doing this, and one thing that I can tell you is I've seen it time and time again where their constituents, the people of Iowa, want things to be a certain way, and they're not listening. They're listening to outside groups, outside organizations of this state. Don't give up, because we up here use our voices for you down there, even though we don't have the ability to make things happen. Yesterday was a prime example, everyone, that SNAP bill. We had 18 different amendments on that bill. Every one of us 18 Democratic members got up and had a part of that amendment. I didn't write the amendment, but the Democratic Party uses the expertise of each individual in the amendments that they write. And every single amendment was turned down by the Republican Party. They voted against it. And then at the end of it, when they had the votes, they had the bill passed. The guy who actually brought the bill forward bragged, in my mind, about it was passed with no amendments. So like I said, it's an uphill battle, but don't give up. Make sure that they get that document, because there may be something in there that will spark one of them to do something that they don't normally do.
Thank you. Timmy?
Thank you, everybody, for being here. So I'll just share quickly because it won't take, but I'm on natural resources, and we did nothing for the environment in that committee. Just, in case you were out there just wondering what we were doing, nothing. We were very concerned about crossbows, and we were very concerned about killing raccoons in our backyard. That was the gist of that committee. And the Senate sent over no bills that we ran in the House side. So that was a waste of time. I'm the ranking member of the budget, and today they sent over some of the budgets to me. And so I do have the Natural Resource Department of Natural Resources, it is status quo all the way across is what they're doing. And well, actually, it's about 170,000 less, almost 171,000 less. But everything across the board is exactly what they budgeted for this year. And we haven't seen the Senate numbers yet, but that's just what the House met the governor all the way across the board. And then when we asked for highlights from the budget, the only highlight that had a little bit to do with natural resources was that they want to protect Iowa animal agriculture against foreign animal disease. So that's important, but that was their only focus. So it wasn't on water, it wasn't on climate change, it wasn't on anything else. And then watershed management is the only other number that we got in today, and a whopping $250,000. So but you guys, but that's not going to even put butter on my toast. So it does nothing. And so that's really where we stand down there this year. I think Bob did a great job just kind of explaining what Environmental Protection Committee didn't do, and really kind of the mentality down there right now. Many of them don't believe that climate change exists, even though it's 89 today and it's going to snow on Sunday. To all of us, just with a little common sense, that does seem to kind of spark like, something's up. But for our friends across the aisle, they don't seem to think that that's an issue. So it's been very disappointing to me that we have really done absolutely nothing for our environment, and really appears that we're not going to. Pat Grassley did run a fake pipeline bill for your entertainment to clean his skirts. That's what that was for. Let's be honest. It was a monopoly bill. It meant nothing to anybody except for him, so that to get him off the hook when he goes to town halls. And that will be the last that we'll see of that conversation at the State House also, I believe. So sorry, that's kind of a downer for natural resources, but that's what we're doing so far in the House. Not much. Senator Giddens, what do you got?
Thanks, Jimmy.
Thank you all. It's great to be with you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about the environment. It is an issue area that's near and dear to my heart and I'm passionate about. So first, thank you, Roger and Tom, for speaking and for speaking so well about the issues. If we had folks in charge that would listen to you, would be in much better shape, obviously. But we don't right now. So I'll try to explain a little bit about what's happened over in the Senate. So we have a Natural Resources and Environment Committee in the Senate. Over in the House, they have a Natural Resources Committee, and then they have a separate Environmental Protection Committee, which my colleagues described, and they talked about the inaction over there. I am not on the Natural Resources and Environment Committee. I haven't been on it, but there's really nothing happening in that committee, as Representative Brown Powers kind of talked about. It really does much more to policy, hunting and fishing than anything else. So there's not really any environmental protection policy work going on in the Senate. I am, though, on the Commerce Committee. I'm ranking member of the Commerce Committee for the second year this year, and that I've really enjoyed that work and was glad to have the opportunity to get on that, because the Commerce Committee is the committee that does utilities regulation. So that's a very important area of policy when we're talking about the future of our electricity grid and our energy infrastructure, and all of those things that we need to modernize and change in order to move forward into a clean energy future. So I've enjoyed that opportunity. In fact, this past summer, I had the opportunity to attend what's called the Clean Energy Legislative Academy, held out in Colorado. So former Colorado Governor Bill Ritter who was a one-term governor from 2007 to 2011. After he left the governor's office in Colorado, he started a center called the Center for the New Energy Economy at Colorado State University. And one of the major programs of that center is to invite a cohort of legislators from across the country who are working on clean energy issues out to Colorado to work for a week, the better part of a week, with experts in, the energy field about policies that could be pursued or work that could be attempted to do in our individual states in very state-specific ways. So that was a really great learning opportunity for me. Developed some connections with experts across the country that have helped me, even after the fact, have people to call and talk about the context that we're working with here in Iowa. As difficult as it is, we know that the energy, the future of the grid, the electricity grid, and our energy economy is changing. It's going to continue to change. That is going to happen, and we need to be doing all we can in Iowa to be ready for that. And there are opportunities for us to do that, as dismal as it may seem, legislature right now. So. A couple of things that have happened. Well, I will at first, Representative Brown Powers talked about the pipeline bill. There's not really much more to talk about there. I'm sure that, that's been in the news. I'm sure most people are aware of the carbon dioxide pipeline projects that are happening. Status quo means that those pipeline projects will proceed. They go from our ethanol, several of our ethanol plants that capture carbon dioxide emissions from those plants, and it pipes the emissions up to the Dakotas for injection down into the ground, for supposed permanent sequestration. A lot of questions around the technology and all of that. It is kind of moving ahead. The bill was to limit the use of eminent domain, which has been kind of the primary flashpoint, with these pipelines. Whether or not you agree with the technology or whether it's a true climate solution, that's a different issue. The use of eminent domains is the thing that has really upset most people about the pipelines. And so the bill was to limit the use of eminent domain and require that 90% of the parcels along the pipeline routes would have to be met with voluntary easements, voluntary contracts with landowners in order for the last 10% to be done with eminent domain. The bill, as Representative Brown Powers said, really it was run in the House just to appease folks that were upset. But they waited until the week right before the funnel to run it in the House, came over to the Senate, and then the Senate leadership were able to say, oh, we got it too late. We can't do anything with it over here. So, so it's a dead bill. It's not going to happen. Really, there was no interest in having it actually happen from the beginning. So pipelines are happening, I'm sorry to report, and they're going to continue as they are. Other things, back to the utilities. Well, the pipelines are regulated by the Iowa Utilities Board, so that is a commerce committee related issue. Other commerce issues, we actually have had several different bills having to do with rate making. So our investor-owned utilities, which in this state are Mid-American and Alliant. Mid-American actually covers the Waterloo territory. Mid-American and Alliant are the largest utilities in the state, and they're privately owned. The way they receive compensation, the way they set their rates is very outdated, actually. So it's over 100-year-old system. If we're going to build a grid, an electricity grid that's going to meet the demands of the future, as we continue to electrify things, move away from natural gas use and move toward electrification of both transportation and heating. We heat most of our homes and businesses and all with natural gas right now. As we move away from those uses of fossil fuels and into an electrified future, electricity demand is actually going to go up a lot. In fact, 2 to 3 times what we have right now are the estimates for the electricity use that we need to see in the future. We need to modernize most every aspect of our electricity grid in order to be able to handle that. So there are discussions about how to do that. The utilities themselves have their own ideas. They have lots of ideas because they're very powerful. They want to maintain control and they want to continue to make a lot of money all along. Then there are other advocacy groups kind of on the other side of it that want a seat at the table. So there's a lot of kind of pushing and pulling right now in this space to try to figure out what the regulation should look like moving forward into the future. None of those bills made it. There were competing bills and none of them made it through. One thing that I'm still hopeful, we do have one bill that's still alive, and it would be to set up an interim planning committee, basically a project to do some planning involving the Iowa Utilities Board to comprehensively look at all of these different issues and come up with recommended best practices for new policy structure that we could go back next year if this happens, if this planning thing happens. We could come back next year a little bit better informed about what the best practices would be to try to develop policy around in the next legislative session. So I'm really hopeful that we can move that bill forward. I'm working with the majority party in the Senate. I get along well with Senator Wayland Brown, who's the chair of the Commerce Committee. And we have been working together on trying to get components put into that bill that not only look at rate making and how the utilities actually make their money, but also at other factors like reliability and greater penetration of renewable energy and other factors that would go into what a future grid should look like. So that's happening. There's one other thing, solar. We've had this bill. This actually wasn't in the Commerce Committee. It was in the Ag Committee this year. And it is dead, but I'll just call it out. There's a big, as we continue to see more and more utility scale solar. Now utility scale is different from customer owned or solar like you would see on homes or businesses. Utility scale solar would be big, huge fields full of solar panels that are typically owned by the utility company, and they would be the same sort of generation for them like wind farms or coal-fired power plants or natural gas plants. It'd just be another way that they generate electricity. The issue with those, as we begin to see more and more utility scale solar projects, is that they displace farmland. They're built on big open farm fields. So there is pushback from the ag community. And as mentioned before, the powerful Farm Bureau is opposed to seeing productive farmland taken out of production for projects like big utility scale solar projects. So one of the efforts has been to limit, to pass legislation that would limit or would require enormous setbacks from roads, basically, on the scale of more than 2,000 feet from any road. And to say that the corn suitability rating, the corn suitability rating of any property where a utility scale solar project is to be built would have to be below 65 CSR, which basically would mean it has to be very marginal cropland. So those two things together, the setbacks and the low CSR, would essentially make any utility scale solar projects in the state not work. It'd make it impossible to do those. So that bill died. It has come around the last couple of years. It died again this year, thankfully. That's not a good thing. So just thought I'd mention that. So I know I'm talking a lot. Can I
Your
Is it
turn is
okay?
done, honey. We're getting bored.
I didn't say that. Did you have one more thing that you wanted to say?
Go ahead.
I hadn't even gotten to the real meat of it yet.
Uh,
A few more things.
No, yeah, I'll come back. You guys need to listen to somebody else. Yeah.
Okay,
Maybe questions and then you can go again.
thank you, thank you. Yes, why don't we do questions and then
Yeah,
on closing comments, you could take some time. to
sounds
say
good.
that, okay? Okay, we will take questions or comments from the audience now. This is your turn. And if you would come on up to the microphone so that everyone can hear. And if you would identify yourself and any group that you may be with, that would be much appreciated.
My name is Jerry Thornsberry, and I'm elected soil and water conservation commissioner for 5 years that served the county. And I tell you, so ticked off at the legislature for not including soil health in the chapter 161A that governs the soil and water commission. And it was an innocent definition. I don't understand why, the Senate just poo-pooed it. Went through the House, but the Senate would not pick it up. We here in BlackHawk are working so hard with our farmers, and we're calling it climate challenged, not climate change. They'll listen to me if I say the climate is changing, but I can't say climate change. So, it's a climate challenge. And the work that we are doing is so critical right now, because often you've heard the statistic, 2050, we've got to feed 7 billion people in the world on arable acres. And to do that, our soil has to be improved. It's got to be spongy to hold the water coming from these intense rain events that we're having. And I think the most of the farmers of BlackHawk County are getting that. They're beginning to work more diligently. Plus, we have a trainload of money coming down from the federal government. The bipartisan infrastructure bill that was passed has conservation dollars in it. The Inflation Reduction Act has environmental impact dollars in it. And then we got other appropriations for climate change. So there's going to be so much money, and we will be putting in so many more conservation practices to improve our soil health and to improve our water quality. Just one more thing. I was down in Louisiana and for the National Association of Conservation Districts. And Iowa was called out many, many times, because when you look at what's happening with Louisiana and the Gulf there, they're losing about a football size area of soil every hour. It's unbelievable. And of course they have those oil wells abandoned and chemicals, and they're really in terrible shape. But what's coming down from our farm fields is really destroying that entire ecosystem. And we're a part of it.
What was your question?
My question is, how much more money will conservation receive from the state of Iowa? Because if agriculture is so big and so important, and our land matters.
I think Timmy said already it was a status quo budget, so there's increases.
That's correct.
Status quo, so there's no new monies.
Even though our weather is crazy.
Right, and we talked about that earlier. It's status quo.
Very disappointing.
Yep, well, it truly is.
Yeah.
Yep.
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 Anyway,
Sorry, I wish I could make it different, but I can't.
amazing. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry.
Does anyone else have a question that they'd like to ask?
I'm Barb's spokesman. Tommy, because I'm a licensed social worker in town, work at BlackHawk-Bremer Mental Health Center for 35 years. With the bill they passed yesterday with SNAP and Medicaid, has there also been a companion bill saying they're going to increase funding to the food banks in Iowa because those people are going to get slain?
No,
No,
I know.
yeah, it's that. I know Timmy, she actually was assigned to the bill and worked on it, but it was just unbelievable to hear how they were gonna, they said, they call it a public assistance reform. And here's all the amendments that we had. And you talked about it a little bit, but some of the amendments would have improved the bill. But there's no interest in it. And I see Barb's over there next, but the food banks are just going to be just overwhelmed with once this goes through. And I'll let Timmy explain it, but it's terrible. It's hard to believe they're doing that, to be honest with you.
Go ahead, Barb, and then we'll dive right into SNAP.
You've heard me. Thank
Yeah.
you. I mean, this is more of a thank you to you guys because, Timmy, at the last minute, forced the House to have a hearing on SF 494. I went down for it and testified. She brought one of her clients with, there were other food banks around the table, around the state that testified. And so thank you, but I'm here more tonight to say thank you for trying to stop a train wreck. Because I shared it last week and I'll share it here tonight. And this is one pantry. It's the Cedar Valley Food Pantry here in Waterloo. Last March, we served 3,200 families. This March, we served 48. That's what's happening here. At the same time, supply is a train wreck for us. We're trying to do what we can. Everybody who comes will get food. It probably won't be exactly what they want. We're not limiting. I mean, we always limit certain things, but I'm just really glad that you guys are all there, because if you weren't, it would have been a whole lot worse. And it's bad enough as it is. And I really feel bad for the people who are going to need SNAP and Medicaid in the coming years. One, it's going to deter them from even applying, and two, there's going to be people that have almost nothing probably that won't get on it. So I'm just here more to say thank you than talk about how to win from there. So thank you very much. I read your comments, Jerome. One of the articles that I read, I read yours. So thank you for that. Just keep fighting, right?
Yep, that's what we do.
It's an issue in our community, and we'll just keep fighting. So thank you.
You're welcome. So we did offer 18 amendments. Maybe 2 of those were a little push, but 16 of them would have made the bill better. And we knew going into it, they weren't going to take any of those amendments. The thing is, this is Senate File 494. They have a deal with the Republican senators to proceed with session. Basically, senators were not going to do, Senate Republicans were not going to do anything else until our House Republicans moved this bill. And once that was established, we knew there was very little that we could do to go forward, except for to continue to educate Iowans. And I think that is probably our role at this point. And then, as I reminded everybody in the House yesterday, then the second role is to answer the call when your constituent calls you and they've lost their services, or they can't get their meds, or they're hungry, or their families are hungry, and they need an explanation of this bill. I directed my Republican colleagues to make sure that they read the bill, because I'm sure they hadn't, and that they pulled the LSA report. I reminded them that what we were all saying yesterday had nothing to do with Democrat talking points. It had everything to do with LSA report and what this bill will do. We know it will do. And then when we were finished, and it, you know, I am not a person to run a bunch of amendments, and I'm not a person to push a debate long, because, you know, I know it doesn't do any good, but I do believe that in this particular case, it does so many bad things that it was our job to at least point out to every single member in that house every single thing wrong with that bill. And it had a lot. And to point out that everything, all the negative things that it would do to people in the long run. And I think besides hurting Iowans, because that is our theme this year, if you hadn't noticed yet, this bill loses $43 million of federal money. So my colleagues will tell you that it saves $8 million in state budget by year 4. But in that same year, we're losing close to $42 million of federal money. So if you know mathematics basic, so probably 6th grader could, I don't know, but you take that 43 million minus the 8 million that you're saving, we're still in the hole $34 million. And what was also difficult to explain, because they kept saying, well, it's federal money. It's Iowans' federal money they've already paid into taxes. So we've already paid it in, folks. It's our money that we paid in. We're not going to get it in Iowa. Somebody else in another state's going to get it, and they're going to feed their people. So it will go to good use. It just won't be feeding Iowans. So that was the whole key. And I pointed out yesterday that so there's 3 groups that really are pushing that bill. But the Iowa Taxpayer Coalition group, and I still to today, no one can answer me why they think this is so great, because it's just, we're still paying the taxes. It's not saving anybody's tax money. We're not getting it. It's going somewhere else. And I still can't get an explanation of why that's a good idea to do. But it will get signed by the governor, I'm sure. And so it will be our jobs to educate and our jobs to continue to pick up the pieces, our job to volunteer to Barb, our job to donate to Barb. Tom, I think we're going to have Medicaid patients drop off their Medicaid services. And we pointed out yesterday that if I am chemically balanced and on my medication and all of a sudden I lose my benefits, I become unbalanced, I cost you more money then. And it's hard on me as an individual with mental health to cycle and try to get back. Or if I'm diabetic and I don't have my diabetic medicine, or if I'm high blood pressure and I have a stroke, on and on and on, because they've got 10 days to get their information in. And we know because of LSA, not because Democrats are making this up, that 8,000 people just in the startup portion of this new system will lose their Medicaid. And so they'll be scrabbling to get back on. There's nobody out there to help them get back on. There's 216 FTEs to knock them off, but there are not 216 people to help them back on. There is a 10% contingency to this program for this vendor. So, you know, in human terms, that's a bonus for 10% bonus for knocking people off for coming back to Iowa saying you're saving money. That's wrong at every level. I don't understand. I mean, I respect a bonus at BGM if I do a good job, but I don't expect a bonus on the backs of Iowans who need us to protect them the most. And I could again talk for 2 hours and take the senator's time, but it was a bad bill. We did our due diligence. But at the end of the day, now it is where we're at. And so everyone's going to have to help out and help these folks do what they're doing. One of the great things that is happening in Des Moines And maybe we'll have to help, maybe promote that, but the Des Moines Library is hiring a social worker to help some of these folks. But anyway, it's crappy all the way around.
name is Julie Johnson. I'm a resident of Waterloo. And I have been speaking out about the hazardous CO2 pipelines now for over a year. All of this ties in with our environment. If you think for 1 minute, if anybody in the state of Iowa thinks for 1 minute that these hazardous CO2 pipelines are going to be the answer to CO2 in the atmosphere, they are dead wrong. Because what's going to happen is one thing, if they put the pipelines in, there's going to be massive compaction of the soil, which will not absorb water. There will be, and then any crops planted on that compaction site will not produce the yields that they did before the pipelines were put in. These companies are irresponsible. They plan to sell carbon credits. They don't plan to permanently sequester the carbon in North Dakota. They're going to use it for fracking. In Illinois, the Illinois residents have refused to let Navigator Carbon Solutions sequester the carbon. Right now, Navigator has no place to sequester the carbon. So if a pipeline goes into Iowa, it would be a pipeline to nowhere. And the Iowa geology is not suitable for sequestration. And if any pipeline tells you it is, they are lying again. Last May, my sister noticed some people talking, or not talking, they were out on the road east of our farm, our family farm. And so after they left, she went out to see what they were doing. They had dug, it was Navigator, they had dug a hole in the road, in the gravel road, and left it open. She went back to the farm, got 3 tape measures, brought them out, and measured the hole, 10 inches across, 8 to 9 inches deep, left it there. The pipeline companies also have been digging similar holes in county paved roads to insert their navigation technology. If they can't even fill in a hole, for Pete's sakes, how can we trust them with the safety of anything else regarding the pipelines? The only, neither Navigator nor Summit Solutions has ever built a carbon dioxide pipeline before. They do not know what they're doing.
Do you have a question for them?
Yes, actually. Because Governor Reynolds has appointed somebody to take Richard Lazier's place on the IUB, and also has appointed someone to take over the OCA, the Office of Consumer Advocate. I asked the Senate to look very hard at those nominees. And if they are not going to represent the people of Iowa, if they are going to harm us, just like the Republican part of the legislature has, please deny those nominations.
Yeah.
Would you like to respond?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you, Julie. Appreciate all your advocacy on this issue. And in fact, I mean, of any one issue that we've seen advocacy up at the State House this year, it has, I mean, that has been the most relentless advocacy that I've seen out of any group. So thank you for your engagement on the issue. And I already spoke to the bill, right? And the fate of the bill and what happened with it. There was an opportunity to do that bill, and leadership chose to take the path they did. So you just need to understand that. to the point of the appointments to the Iowa Utilities Board and to the Consumer Advocate. I'll just pledge to you that my colleagues and I, Senate Democrats, we take the review of those appointments very seriously. Both of those will flow through the Commerce Committee as well, which I'm ranking member of. I've already interviewed Eric Helland, who is the nominee for Dick Logier's seat on the Iowa Utilities Board. We're continuing to kind of have discussions with other people who have known him and who are familiar with his work that he's done elsewhere, so that we can be, as best positioned as possible when we consider how we want to vote. The other one, the consumer advocate position, I have not had an opportunity yet to interview, but I will be doing that. And just to add to that, I don't know if you're aware of this, but Jerry Huser, who was the chair of the Iowa Utilities Board, announced yesterday morning that she's retiring effective the end of April. So we already know a new person who's been nominated to take her place. And so the Iowa Utilities Board only has 3 positions. It's just a 3-person board. And very soon, 2 of those will be brand new people. So it's a very serious thing. And I again pledge to you that we take review of those people very seriously. Now, that said, Democrats used to be able to stop nominations. It required a 2/3 vote of the Senate to confirm a gubernatorial appointment. We now only have 16 seats in the Senate. So we don't have more than 1/3 of the senators in our caucus. So even if we stuck together as a caucus and we all voted no on an appointee, we can't stop it from going through if all the Republicans want to vote in favor of that appointee. And I just want to be real with you about that situation. So I guess, that's all I can do is pledge to you that we'll look at them as closely as we can and vote as best we can in the interests of the people and the environment.
Yep. Any other questions?
Roger White, Cedar Falls. It's not a question, but remember when I introduced climate change and greenhouse gases, it was not one, it wasn't just carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, hydrofluorocarbons, and ozone. So even if the carbon dioxide is sequestered, it's only one little piece of the puzzle.
Thank you.
Roger, will you email us your remarks as well, please? Thank you. Some of us need more education than others on that.
I think then we will go to closing comments and we will begin with the Senate this time. And now this is your opportunity, okay, to finish up what you were going to say.
My apologies for being long-winded earlier. I get down in the weeds. I understand that. And this is a complex and pretty boring policy area to begin with. So my apologies. I guess the last big thing I wanted to say is, well, Jerry talked about it when she came up, that there's lots of federal money coming, right? We had the bipartisan infrastructure law that had a lot of money that could impact the environment in various ways. And then the Inflation Reduction Act. The Inflation Reduction Act is a once in a generation investment in all kinds of, activities and projects and that are directly aimed at climate change and other environmental issues. No new regulation in it. It was a very interesting proposal because it was all incentivizing these different activities, right? And it was all about carrots and not about sticks. Lots and lots and lots of money going out in a relatively quick time period. So since that law was passed last year, a lot of us have been concerned about making sure that the state of Iowa is prepared as best it can to receive a lot of that money that's going to be coming down, and it'll be coming through various federal agencies, the EPA, the Department of Energy and others, Department of Transportation, so forth. and a lot of it to the states to then dish out to local projects, those kinds of things. Some metro areas, city governments, county governments would get money directly and so forth. Anyway, I wanted to bring up one not good thing that just happened. So one piece of that, which this is very small in the scheme of the Inflation Reduction Act, but a grant program for every state, $3 million to each state to develop a climate action plan, essentially. So money that would go to the state for them to use, they call it climate pollution reduction planning program. But it's essentially about developing a plan for how the state is going to attack climate change in ways that state government has some degree of control over. And then the plan that's developed using the $3 million from the federal government would pave the way for a lot of the additional Inflation Reduction Act money that would be coming down. You know, we'd have a plan in place. These things are what we need money for now. And here comes some more federal money, right? So it's kind of the first step in trying to be prepared for all of this additional Inflation Reduction Act money. Governor Reynolds decided that we don't need that $3 million. That the only explanation we heard was that we already have the Iowa Energy Plan, which was developed in 2017. It's not the same thing. It's not an analogous plan, but that was used as an excuse for not accepting this federal money. And that this money has strings attached, quote unquote, strings attached. Well, the strings attached are that we need to take action. After we develop a plan, we need to take action. And the action would threaten the status quo of a lot of big businesses and industries and so forth in the state. A lot of it probably agribusiness related. So the $3 million was turned back. We will not be developing a climate action plan, and we have no way of knowing how much future additional federal money through the Inflation Reduction Act that jeopardized that we will likely never get. So bad news. Wanted to point that out. Still going to be looking for other, money that could be coming to the state or to our metro areas directly, and trying to be as prepared as we can to utilize those funds as they become available. But this is not a good first signal. So thank you.
Thank you. Kimmy?
Thank you. And just because of that federal money, so I've met with the governor's staff, and there are several areas where we're turning federal money away. SNAP is another one. Yet we're still sitting on ARPA dollars. We're still sitting on interest earned for COVID dollars. We still have a huge surplus. And then we've rejected all this federal money. Had we taken the federal money that is available, and we had still had all these other things, we could have really peaked Iowa in so many avenues as far as our natural resources and our healthcare and our teachers and our public school and our students. So, you can see just the negativity that has come through some of the choices. And she always uses the strings attached to money. That's why she doesn't want to do it. And really it's just more politics over the better of people of Iowa. And that's starting to get really, really old for me, to say the least. So I just wanted to thank Tom and Roger for your presentation. Those are both wonderful. Jerry, thank you for everything that you do and your travels and your work with our local farmers. And maybe behind the scenes, we can get more done. It does seem that way. Julie, I always learn something from you and your family and things you do. And thank you for the league for having us today. We will continue our fight at the Capitol. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. Jerome?
Yes, I guess for me, thank you for this opportunity and other opportunities to sit here before everyone. I am a rookie at this. This is my first term, but one of the things that I can say is I'm blessed to have these two individuals to give me advice, to help me to understand the process.
Doing good.
And, you know, the whole thing is what I'm seeing when I'm down there, sitting in that chair, my wife, she's my clerk. And we sit there, we look, we listen. And it's unfortunate that there are so many individuals down there who are in charge who don't understand that this isn't about them. It's about the people, you know? But once again, it's about the people to get them to understand that, no, you represent me. And if you don't represent me, then you shouldn't be here. So for me, I'm going to continue this fight, continue working with my fellow legislators so that we can try and make things better for all of you here. You know, that's what we have to do. That's what we're charged with doing. So we'll keep up the fight and go from there. This guy right here, though, I just love him when he gets in there and he. They don't like-
Jerome.
Yeah.
But thank you.
Well, thanks, Jerome, and thanks to everybody. I think, is this the last one?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Mhm.
So, but anyway, I just wanted to talk about House File 654. And that bill was listed, the way they title it, firearms and property rights. But the bill itself, it would require business owners and government officials to allow concealed weapons or dangerous weapons on their property under certain circumstances. Private and public schools, community colleges, and regents and universities must allow concealed firearms or dangerous weapons on their premises under certain circumstances. Prohibits any Iowa property and casualty insurance carrier from denying. And so, and then business, insurance, and education have expressed their concerns about this bill. You know, if it's property right, well, then if you're the business and you have owned the property, now they're saying you can't decide what goes on. And I serve on public safety, I'm ranking member of it. And this came through the committee. And we had a series of questions. Brian Meyer and Rick Olson, who are both attorneys, you know, they kind of dive into the details of the bills and they went after them on the floor. And we had a few of their Republicans that didn't vote for that bill. But, you know, my example to how this could go the wrong direction, say, for instance, now at the University of Iowa, or you and I, you go to a football game and you got your weapons in your car and you're at the game and there's another fan there, you get into an argument, you go to your car and come back and, you know, have a firearm used. It is, you know, this policy is bad. It's bad for Iowa. You know, you just think of the schools in this state. I've had teachers send me emails about they're fearful in the classroom. Parents have said that the children themselves are fearful in the classroom. You know, and their argument is that, well, more people got armed with guns is going to save more lives. Well, you know, if you just look at the history of the gun violence that's occurred in this country, it is overwhelming. You know, we've had, I think it was like 414. I think that was the number that was shared to me. People that have died from gun violence. So you know, and I just got to tell you, it's about the majority aspect. They're in control and they can do it. So it was frustrating to go through that. And I appreciate Timmy and Eric and Jerome. And so thanks for everybody coming. Enjoy the weather.
Well, it snows on Sunday.
Thank you. I think we all owe these folks up here a really, really debt of gratitude. Not just for being here and discussing with us what's going on, but for what they do every single day down in Des Moines. So thank you all.
Thank you.